Hello and welcome back to this edition of the Ferrell Phelps Show. This is part 2 of our relationship segment. I have today with me Michelle Landry. Michelle, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Good to be here.
And I also have Melissa Slade. Melissa, welcome to the show.
Thank
You know, this show is always very interesting when we talk about a particular topic, that topic being relationships, because men and women have so many different opinions as it relates to that thing in particular. And of course, the purpose of this show is to educate, motivate, and inspire people through what we've been through, be it relationships or whatever that is. Michelle, I want to start with you. Now, I know that you've been married,
Yes.
of course, and we've had that conversation, and you have 2 boys.
Yes.
Yes.
And 2 different fathers.
With 2 different fathers.
Mm-hmm.
So tell me, Michelle, because you've separated twice, what do you think one of the main components was in the relationship that may have caused the separation?
Okay. Both of them were two differences. Okay, with the
Okay.
relationships. Okay.
All right.
One, I'm just going to be honest with you. It was drug related.
Okay.
In the first relationship, and the second one was just that good old honest cheating. Honest cheating. You said oxymoron. How I use
Honest cheating, huh?
that? Yeah.
Okay.
And that's what that was.
Yeah, and you know what? I call those deal breakers. And a lot of times in relationships, you have certain things that no matter what, that is the deal breaker.
Yes.
And certainly in your case, drugs may have been one of them. And then that good old honest cheating, as you called it.
Yes.
And that's always one of the things that can cause a relationship to end. Now, tell me this. Do you think that a relationship has the propensity to survive cheating?
If you're forgiving, I think so, because there are some relationships that if you will never forget, but you'll forgive, but you'll never forget. In my situation, no, because it was a constant, and and
Okay.
I kept going and trying to forgive, and then things became the obvious. You got these little hints here and there.
Yeah.
When you start dressing up and putting cologne on to go to the gym. It's obvious. It's obvious. But the first one, I will say this: I probably would still be married to my first husband if the drugs didn't take over.
Yeah.
Because otherwise he was a good person. He really, really was.
Right.
But that just took over him. He loved that drug more than the family.
Yeah.
And I had to make a decision because a son was involved.
Right, right. A lot of times the parents have to make a decision based on the child and not wanting the child to, I guess, take on some of the same characteristics when they get in a relationship. You don't want to have a daughter and your daughter see you going through this thing in your relationship and you're
Exactly.
staying in it and you're being abused and mistreated.
Exactly.
You have to be a role model for your kids. And a lot of times as women, you have to stand up for what is right and you have to teach people how to treat you.
Exactly.
And I think so often in relationships, we are not teaching people how to treat us. And we're giving a terrible message when we allow them to mistreat us, to abuse us, and this type of thing. So we have to take a stance and draw the line somewhere in the sand and say, this is it.
Right.
I just can't deal with this. And not only that, but you have to be strong enough to realize that you can stand on your own. And I think a lot of times when divorces and separations take place, be it the man or the woman, may feel like, oh, how can I live without this person? How can I survive without this person?
They're scared.
And you're scared. So was that your experience?
Scared in the beginning, but when I had my son, I had to be realistic, and after a while, my mom and dad said, Michelle, come on now,
Yeah.
you keep going back, you keep going back. But when I had to look at my son, I said, if you just get me out of this just one more time, I'm not going back. And I didn't.
Yeah.
And I didn't.
Yeah. And you know what? It takes making that type of decision for your life, and it takes knowing yourself well enough to know that you deserve better. A lot of times I think we put up with things, and I think women put up with things because they don't feel like they deserve better. And a lot of times when you don't know who you are, you will allow people to treat you any kind of way. Now, I want to go to you, Melissa. Melissa has not been married, and certainly she is excited about that happening in her life at some point in time. Now, Melissa, tell me, what is the single life like for you right now?
Well, the single life at my age, I'm 44 years old, and at this stage in my life, I've learned how to be single and happy. I was before I was single and feeling sorry for myself. And when I turned 30, in my 30s, my girlfriend started getting married. And I just figured out that my journey was different than theirs.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't the same. And God had something different for me. And that's what you really have to come to realization, that your life is different from others, and you cannot pattern your life to other people. You can't say, well, you know, at 25 I want to get married. At 30 I want to get married. Because it may not happen for you, and if you put a date on it, you can get lost in that.
Right.
So what I really did was concentrate on my future for me, my career, the things that I needed to do to enrich myself.
Right.
And then I thought, you know, I'm still there now. I'm saying to myself, as long as I do that, if I never get married, I will still be enriched within myself. And no one's an island for themselves. So with me, it's like if I can enrich another young girl's life, you know, because a lot of things that you go through to help other people.
Always.
So that's how I'm living my life now, and I'm very happy. I'm very happy. I took a tour through Europe. You know, when you're married, you have to. Ask, can I go? You know. So you know, when I decided to go, I was just able to go.
Right.
But I still have a dream of being married one day. That's still a dream of mine, but I'm not gonna let it take over my life, and I'm not going to let it stop me from my goals and my dreams. And throughout my journey, I'm pretty sure I will meet my husband.
You know what? I'm pretty sure you will. You know, we've just begun the second segment, but I'm really enjoying the dialogue. I know it's only going to get better. Stick around. You guys stick around too. We're going to be back in just a moment with more of our relationship show. We'll be right back.
Sky Trues Custom Eyewear has taken the world by storm. In only 8 months, Sky Trues has gained the eyes of many, including celebs like Big Sean, Little Flip, Destiny Child, Soulja Boy, just to name a few. Through custom design, Sky Trues can put your imagination on your frames. I bring to you the next big thing in Houston, Sky Trues, created by Golden Boy, the musician, the artist, the entrepreneur, and grassroots marketing genius. Be inspired. Sky Trues, custom designed frames. Sky Trues.
All right, welcome back to the Ferrell Phelps Show. We're talking about relationships. And you know, relationships affect all of us. And one of the big topics is always, you know, what do men want? What are men looking for? And this type of thing. Before we left off, we were talking about the deal breakers, and we were talking about the single life. Now, you were talking about a wonderful trip you had that you're taking recently to Europe and all this type of stuff, and being single allotted you that time to do what you wanted to do with yourself. So you're not just sitting there mundane, not doing anything.
Exactly.
You know, not only that, but Melissa, you actually run several different businesses and companies and things like that. As a single person, you actually ran for Justice of the Peace. Justice of the Peace, as well.
Yes.
You have an insurance company.
Yes.
And
I'm an insurance agent.
Insurance agent,
yes.
And also a service. Yes.
My mother and I own a home health agency, and we service the elderly.
Right.
Yes.
Right. So, you know, I want to ask you this, and the reason why I was going in that direction, do you feel like you ever meet men that might be intimidated because you're doing so much as a single woman?
Well, if that is the case, well, let me think. I think there is a relationship I had in that sense, and because I have been single for so long, I think sometimes I have to be careful of how I am as a businesswoman, because sometimes I feel like I may be a little controlling.
Okay.
In a sense. Because when you own your own business, you have to be in control of everything. So you have to kind of get out of that mode when you're in a relationship or when you're dating someone.
Right.
And not be that independent woman as a businesswoman when you're with a man.
It's hard.
Right.
And you have to kind of detox from that type of thinking and knowing that your role changes when you're dating.
Right. I totally agree. And one of the things that you hear a lot now in these days in relationships and with women, you hear this thing, the Beyonce song, independent women and all this stuff. And so you hear a lot of women saying they want to be independent. But do you really want to be independent?
I would say yes. The reason being I'm saying that, going back to what you said, because sometimes it can be intimidating to the men that I have dated, being a counselor, and I have to remove myself from counseling because sometimes they say I treat our conversation as if I'm counseling them. Okay, so I've learned to, I've gotten much better at that now, But yes, I would still want my independence, but you still want that gentleman to open the door, You still want that man to, he doesn't have to always have to pay for that meal or give you that call. How was your day? And he really wants to know. You know what I mean? And not just saying it just because it's part of the conversation, you see. But yes, I love my independence. I really, really do, And right now, if it happens for me, I would love to find that man that's equally yoked to me, and accept me for me.
Right. Absolutely. You know what? Speaking of equally yoked, I think that's very important that we have a mate that is equally yoked. And a lot of times we get in situations and relationships where the person that we're with, we're not equally yoked with that person, and we expect it to work. It's like putting 3 tires on a car that are circular and then putting a square tire on it. You're going to constantly get bumpy bump with that resistance. Why? Because you're not equally yoked. And a lot of times I feel like when you're not equally yoked, it's when you've made a decision on your own to do this thing, when it's not been a God thing, or you've not been spiritually led to be with that person. And so you find yourself derailed in the relationship and you wonder, what the hell just happened?
Right.
Because you can still be in love, and you can have that strong love for that person, and you say, well, why didn't it work? I'm in love with that person, but certain things aren't meant to be. So if you love that person strong enough, as you say, you have to let that person go.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You certainly have to let that person go. And you don't want to continue to hold on to somebody that don't want to be there. Or you know what? A lot of times we don't want to accept the fact that something must end because we see it as failure.
This is true.
And a lot of times, I think people stay in relationships because they've been told prior to getting into the relationship, that ain't going to work. I can see how she is, I can see how he is. That dude ain't good for you.
Well,
that girl ain't good for you.
That's a mistake I've made. I've made mistakes from what other people have said.
Okay.
I was the type of child or person growing up that I wanted to please my family.
Yes.
So it was like I wanted to bring someone home that my parents liked, my family liked, my grandmother. And if they told me that they didn't like that person, that made me think about what they said. And sometimes I would make my decisions on what they said. And I regret that. Sometimes I think that I let a good one go because I was thinking of what my family was thinking. And then you see them later, and then they're doing good. They're married now, they have children, and you say, well, I let a good one go. But and now that I'm older, I see that you really can never please your family with the person. There's no one ever good enough that you can bring to your family. Well, some families are more inviting. But single people, you really have to make sure that you know the person that you're with for yourselves, and that you go through your relationship together and go through the ups and downs and not listen to what other people are saying, because it's you and that person in that relationship. And you and that person knows how you feel about each other. So when you make a decision on who you're going to be with, it should be between you and that person, and your family should accept that person into your life that you have brought into your life. Because I go by what the word says, and I believe when it says you leave your home and you cleave to who you're with. So that relationship is who you are with. That's who you've chosen to be for yourself. So when you've chosen that person, that's the person that you've chosen to be with for the rest of your life. And another thing I've learned too, being in my 40s, is that when it says a man looks when he finds a wife, so you really have to be a wife. Be ready to be a wife before he finds you. And it's in your single days, you should learn how to be a wife. There are ministries you can go to. There are books you can read. And really, for me, I need to know how I should be for my husband and not looking for what he can be for me. That's how I am. And I know what my needs are. So if you know you're unequally yoked, you're unequally yoked. But the way I am is that I know how I want to be for my husband. And my husband is going to be the person that receives me for who I am. And if he doesn't receive me for who I am, then I know he's not my husband.
I think that's a very good answer. And I'll say this about that: if it don't fit, don't force it.
Right.
If it don't fit, don't force it. Hey, we're having a wonderful dialogue, just as I expected us to have. We're going to be back in just a moment with more of the Ferrell Phelps Show. You guys stick around. We'll be back. All right, welcome back to this edition of the Ferrell Phelps Show. We're talking about relationships. This is one of those conversations that could go on for a lifetime, because relationships is something that will exist forever. And there's so many different dynamics to relationships. Man. Now, I think we left off with what would you do differently in the next relationship that you have? How might you interact differently in that relationship based on the past relationships that you've had? Michelle, I want to start with you.
Okay, what I would do differently this time as far as trying to find that man, okay, I think I'd be a better listener. As I spoke earlier about, I need to be a better listener and quit being so judgmental, you know what I'm saying? And not looking by appearance. You got to go from what's inside, okay? Just because he's wearing that suit and those shiny shoes, it might be that lawyer or that doctor or whatever, you know, does that make him a good man for me? Okay, he might be a good man, but not a good man for me. So that's what I would do differently, you know, and go what's inside. I don't care if he is that garbage man or that construction worker, you know. He has to be good for me. And we just mesh equally.
I think that's a wonderful answer. And a lot of times I've heard women say they don't want a garbage man, or they don't want this kind of guy, they want that kind of guy. But you might be missing a diamond in the rough by not taking a garbage man who is a wonderful brother who's going to treat you the way that you deserve to be treated.
That's true.
You know, or you can get you, like you say, a doctor or a lawyer who might be beating your butt when you get home.
Right.
So that doesn't define a good relationship. You know, a lot of times we need to look at the heart of the man. And a lot of times I think you get distracted by the physical appearance or perhaps the occupation and things like that. But we got to look a little deeper than that.
It goes back to what we think, what we want people to think too. Girl, who you date? Oh, he's a doctor. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You know, we get caught up with that.
Yeah.
And that's just so empty. You know, it's
It
shallow.
really is.
It's very shallow.
Yeah, and I think, and I'm not putting anybody down.
Oh, no,
by
not at
saying
all,
that,
not at all.
But I think that some women need to not be so shallow.
Yes, yes.
And a lot of times, what I see is the shallow women tend to stay single forever, and they operate with a level of bitterness, and also judgment. But you ain't got nobody. But you always talking about judge. But who you with? So I look at that.
Yes.
I look at that. Melissa,
Yes.
what would you do differently?
I think what I would do differently is not be too much of the giver in the relationship. Sometimes you have to sit back.
Yeah.
You have to sit back and be the lady.
Right.
And see how, because a man has his role, And I think a man can actually have his role a little bit better if you receive from him.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And my problems I think in a lot of some of my relationships is that I gave too quickly. You know, I was the one that was, paid the bill too quick.
Yeah.
I was the one that didn't really receive the opening of the door. I would get to the door and I'd open it myself. I think that's just the business side of me.
Yeah.
But I think what I need to do on this next relationship is just allow the man to be a man.
Mm-hmm.
Allow him to make him feel like he's important, that he has a part to play in the relationship. Because if a man, I feel like if he believes he can't receive from you, then he feels like he doesn't have anything to give you.
So why is he
Right.
here?
Yeah, so why is he in your life? So I think that's what I would do differently, is not be so forward and giving as I was before.
In a previous relationship. Yeah, I totally agree. You know what? As men, we like to feel like we're contributing something and giving something because it makes us feel like we have value in that relationship.
Yes.
But a lot of times what happens in today's relationships in 2015, women are back to that independent thing.
Right.
And I hear, I don't need a man to do this. I don't need a man. I got my... Shut up. I mean, really.
Yeah.
Because...
True.
No, you may not need them for A, B, C, and D, but believe me, the right brother can add value to your life, and you'll understand why you need a man.
That's a characteristic of a good man, though, because you have some men out there, too, that say, I paid for that last dinner. You know what I mean? You know what I mean?
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, it works both ways. You go like, okay, and then you find yourself in a relationship going, okay, let me hear him pay this because I want him to say nothing later. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That kind of thing. So it's either one extreme or the other.
Right. Right. And you know what, also, you have to realize that the give and take is not always on the same plane. You may be giving 60% this month, and he might be giving 40, and next month he might be giving 75, and you giving 25. It's not going to always be that perfect balance, and I think people need to understand that. And do you guys agree with me, or is that just my... I really do think that it's important that we recognize that. And what he might contribute, like for instance, he's buying your dinner when you guys go out, every time you go out. But you might be at the house and say, you know what, let me put my baby's clothes in the cleaner, let me wash his clothes. You may contribute in a totally different way.
Right.
But you're still making contract. It doesn't always have to be or tit for tat, because to me that's not a real relationship.
It's not.
Right. And if you see you're going out with this guy and you've been out on a few dates and he's paid, I think a woman should say, well, you've paid so and so many times. I'll get it this time.
Yeah. And you know what? And believe it or not, even if they did not accept you paying for that dinner or that meal, just the fact that you said that, that's like, oh wow, man, you know what? She all right. She's actually taking me into consideration because she know I paid for it 50 times. So she's like, oh, hey, let me take care of this here. That's going to touch my heart a certain way, and it's going to start telling me something about who that woman is. And now we also have in today's society what I call gold diggers.
Yes.
They exist. That's just real talk. They exist. They out there and they exist, and they just looking for a baller. In my industry, I've worked with tons of different people. Needless to say, from the athlete to directors to the, and I know a lot of women who that's their goal. To get that brother who is high dollar, and if he ain't, she ain't giving him no time. That's real talk.
Yeah, I agree.
That's real talk. So, number one for me, I don't want you if that's how you are. Right off the bat, if that's the kind of woman you are, you don't need to be in my world. Because I might be broke tomorrow.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
That's right.
I'm broke right now. I'm just saying, I would want somebody who is going to be for me and with me during my good time, during my bad time, and most importantly, during my bad time, because that's going to show me who you really are.
Exactly.
Or if you get with me when I don't have $1 million in the bank, or I'm struggling, I ain't got but $10,000 in the bank, but you with me, That
Right.
tells me something about who you are. So when I get what I'm supposed to have, guess who's gonna get blessed? You gonna get blessed. Because you've shown me who you were during my hard time. It lets me know you deserve some of my blessings in our good time.
And I think that goes both ways.
Absolutely.
Because there are men who are looking for women who have that money, you
Mhm.
know, and want to be taken care of. And can I move in next week?
Yeah.
You know?
And if a brother asks you if he can move in next week and you let him move, you need your butt whooped. I mean, really. You really, I mean, and you see women that do that, and I think oftentimes they do that out of desperation.
And they
That's
afraid
true.
to be alone.
And afraid
Yes,
to be
exactly.
alone. Go on, be alone, be sad, be whatever. I'd rather be alone and miserable than with somebody who's making me miserable.
Mhm.
And
That's
see,
true.
my philosophy is before you take those vows, you should already know that person is, I mean, people do change. But at that time, you should believe that person, when they say those vows, that they really mean that.
That's
Mhm.
true.
So, I mean, the test of the relationship, I mean, when you're in a relationship, that is the test.
Mm-hmm.
So when it says for better or worse, rich or poor, you should have already that test should have already been set before you walk down that aisle.
I absolutely agree. I think we have one question from one of the audience members. Yes, Tony.
Yeah, I would like to, whoever want to answer this, but my question is this. We have some independent women. We meet this man. He's soft, but he want to be treated as a man. What do you do with him where you still have respect for him as a man, but you realize he's a weak man and you don't want to be with him?
Define soft.
Soft like he a weak man. He just, he's sorry. He doesn't want to go to work, or he's a loser, but you trying to, because you have a chemistry with him, you're trying to give him the benefit of the doubt, but he's not excelling. He's not trying to go to school. He's not trying to do anything with himself. So what do
Yeah.
you do?
I can ad lib on. Well,
Go ahead, Melissa.
I think that has to do a lot with your own self-worth. If you're with a person that has no ambition, and it has to be more than chemistry, because eventually that person is going to bring you down. So if I believe if a woman is with a man in that way, I think she should just tell him the truth. And I believe if she stays with him, she will be a hindrance to him. He can't grow if he stays with you and he's leaning on you to become stronger in that sense. And he has no ambitions, because you can be with someone that's not totally there, but you can see they have some type of drive and ambition. But if you get with someone that does not have a drive and ambition, you're really no help for them. It's best to just let them go.
You're hurting him too.
Yeah.
Yes.
And just to kind of piggyback on what our audience question was, you have to look at yourself when you're selecting a mate or a person like that appears to be sorry or trifling or is not doing the things that you think they should do in that relationship. Right. You have to examine yourself and say, now, why am I attracted to a man that ain't doing nothing? Right. Why am I attracted to a man that's sorry? Why am I attracted to a man that's weak? Let's take a look at yourselves when you have that type of question about your relationship and your situation, because guess what? The common denominator in every relationship that you're in is you.
That's true. True.
That's just real talk. Needless to say, I'm enjoying this dialogue so much. We're going to be back in just a moment with more of our relationship show. You guys stick around. We'll be back.
Sky Trues Custom Eyewear has taken the world by storm. In only 8 months, Sky Trues has gained the eyes of many, including celebs like Big Sean, Little Flip, Destiny Child, Soulja Boy, just to name a few. Through custom design, Sky Trues can put your imagination on your frames. I bring to you the next big thing in Houston, Sky Trues, created by Golden Boy, the musician, the artist, the entrepreneur, and grassroots marketing genius. Be inspired. Sky Trues, custom designed frames. Sky Trues!
All right, welcome back to this edition of the Ferrell Phelps Show. We are having such wonderful dialogue dialogue about relationships. Man, this has been very enlightening. I know not just for us hearing what we all have to say, but for the people who are actually getting to hear this. Now, I did have one final question, and I want you both of you guys to answer this. How do you define a healthy relationship? Michelle, I'll start with you.
When it's equal, when it's balanced, when you have each other's back, there's no judgment. He accepts you for you, with the makeup, without the makeup, at your fault. You know what I'm saying? You know, at your good, because we're not going to be perfect all the time. We're just not. You know, and you feel relaxed with your man or your woman. You know, and saying, I can just excel. There we go.
Yeah.
And you know, that's the time right there. You're waiting to excel. And I was listening earlier to a conversation, which I think it's clicked to me now. I have learned how to let go. And what I mean by that, this man that I'm dating now, Michelle, I'll clean the filters for you in your house, you know, or I'll buy the filters. And I'm going like, what? I got it. No, I'm going to be there tomorrow. I'll do it. I didn't know how to let go. It may sound simple to you, but I had to take care of everything in my house. But now I've learned to release someone else, and I feel so good.
Yeah.
You know, because I can't be that superwoman. You know, I have been being a single mom, but it feels good just to let that person go. So what's healthy to me is love and acceptance. You know.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely agree.
My definition of a healthy relationship is, first of all, I think love is the first.
Sure.
Love and trust. And I believe that in a relationship, each person should know what their role is in that relationship, and it should be understood. And if you know what your role is in that relationship, and you understand his role, he understands my role, then we can work together, and we can depend on each other.
Yes.
And when that other person, and this is when the love comes in, when that other person sees you're getting tired, then they will take over your role just for that time, because they love you, they see what you're going through, and we can just depend and trust and love each other.
Exactly.
That's
Yes.
my
Absolutely.
definition.
And there you have it, the definition of a healthy relationship as defined by Michelle Landry and Melissa Slade. Man, I just have to say it. I've enjoyed this dialogue so much.
Me
You guys
too.
have been wonderful, wonderful guests, and I know people have been enlightened by
It's been
hearing and watching this show today. I want to thank you guys so much for joining me on this edition of the Ferrell Phelps Show, and you can certainly reach us at Let's Talk About It 12tv@gmail.com. That's Let's Talk About It 12tv@gmail.com. You can also find me on Facebook. Simply go to Facebook, type in the name Ferrell Phelps, and you can see a list of all of our shows right there. All right, folks, until next time, we'll see you then.